Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me well. Alisa, please confirm that you can hear me and you can see me. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so good afternoon. Yeah, we are very happy to have you here this afternoon. We'll be talking about a very exciting topic. I think it is touching many people's lives, and from the response we have had, we think there's a lot of interest around it. And this is really trying to make the case for solar-powered water systems. And we'll be talking to you based on USAID's experience in facilitating investments in Kenya and Zambia. My name's Barbara Kazimbaya Senkwe, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Party for USAID's global program called WASH Finance, which is Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene Finance. To start off, to give you a little bit of a context on why we are having this conversation today, during the COVID pandemic, USAID's WashFin program responded to the COVID-19 pandemic by supporting water utilities in Zambia and Kenya to install solar systems for their pumping in different locations. And what we've seen coming out of that experience was that there's been a reduction in energy costs for those systems. We saw revenue increase as the companies were able to pump more water and therefore sell more water. In some cases, we saw even new customers coming on board. We saw a reliability of service because there was now reliable power that was being provided for these systems. So we then asked ourselves the question, so if solar has got so many benefits, why is the uptake of solar installations for water pumping so low? And so today, we want to share with you some work that WashFin is trying to do under, rather that USAID is trying to do under the WashFin 2 activity. And that is really around evaluating some of the key market conditions that could enable the scaling up, of solar installations in the water utilities across the countries that we are going to be working in. So to aid us in that respect, Ella Lazate, who is with USAID, and I'll say a little bit about her later, will open today's webinar by sharing some of what WashFin did, the support we provided to utilities in Kenya and Zambia, to give you a flavor, of exactly what these activities were. And then our Chief of Party for WashFin 2, Alisa, will also come in and make a presentation that will begin to show you how, as a program, we are thinking about what needs to happen, to structure the scaling up of solar installations across the number of utilities. We will then follow that up with a panel discussion, and we have a good panel today representing academia, water utilities, the private sector, including the banks, as well as people working in actual solar installations. And then we will open up for your views so that we can learn from you and then together begin to wrap up and see what are we seeing as some possibilities and maybe even some challenges around trying to scale up solar installations for water pumping. So before we get started, I would like to ask you, please remember you can add your questions on the question and answer chat box on the right of your screen, and my colleague will be talking to you a little bit on how to work with the blue jeans. We will be trying to answer those questions as we go on the chat, but we will also give you an opportunity towards the end after the panel discussion for you to answer some of your questions in a more open environment. So before I hand over to our guests to speak, I would like to ask Kirsten to just walk you through very quickly how to work with the Blue Jeans platform.
Thank you, Barbara. I want to briefly orient you to the Blue Jeans events platform to ensure that you can fully participate in today's session. The main controls for Blue Jeans are going to be along the right-hand side of your screen. And you'll see on the slide that you are looking at the different options in this black menu. So you have an option to see all the attendees, to chat, which is a little speech bubble. And right below the chat is a place where you can submit questions for Q&A at the end of the panel. As Barbara just mentioned, we hope that during the session today, you will drop your questions in that portion of the menu. This is also where you can find the settings. At the very bottom of this menu, there is a gear icon, and this will allow you to adjust your interface language, the audio output device, and other closed captioning options. So you will be able to turn on closed captioning in the event today. You just click on the closed captioning button, a CC, that's located in the bottom left of your screen. The last thing that I want to mention is that you are able to adjust the portion of your screen that is showing a speaker's video and the presentation. You'll see this slider along the bottom of your screen, and you can adjust how much of which view you are seeing. So with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Barbara.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. And without wasting too much time, I'd like to now invite Ella Lazate. Ella is the Senior Water and Sanitation Advisor focusing on finance and private sector engagement in the Center for Water, Security, Sanitation and Hygiene in the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security at USAID. She has over 10 years of experience developing and overseeing implementation of solutions and partnerships for sustainable growth and change in the WASH sector. She's also in charge of the WASH Fin 2 activity, so we are very delighted to have Ella with us. Ella, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Really, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not the star of the show today. As Barbara mentioned earlier, we're really trying to understand and give you a picture of how do you implement solar solutions in the water sector, and what are the bottlenecks and how can we address them? Why is the uptake of solar pumping so low? You ask such great questions, Barbara, that I really don't want to hold up this webinar. So I just wanted to provide a few framing remarks from USAID's perspective. The work that we're discussing today that you will hear more about is really part of our larger global portfolio, focus on governance and finance, and also our water and climate investments globally. And this is under our flagship program called WASHFIN. It's called WASHFIN 2 because we've actually been implementing WASHFIN now for over 6 years. We had the original WASHFIN program, and then WASHFIN 2 builds on the successes of that. So what you will hear today are examples from the previous WASHFIN program that we're now trying to scale within the countries, Zambia and Kenya, that Barbara mentioned, and also beyond those countries where we implemented. And so just a little bit about the WASHFIN 2 program. It is our global flagship program that we have in USAID to mobilize finance and strengthen governance in the water and sanitation sector. And it aims to mobilize $375 million of public and private funding for climate resilient water and sanitation services. It's also USAID's response to our President's bold call to action, the PREPARE initiative, the President's Emergency Action Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. And it's one piece of it from the water sector. And also, it's very much in alignment with our U.S. Global Water Strategy. And so the program, it's a 5-year program. It just was launched in October, so it goes for we're almost at the end of the first year, and it's really focused on 4 things. So strengthening governance, as I have mentioned a few times, improving service providers, the performance of service providers, which you will hear a lot about today, mobilizing finance, you'll hear a little bit of that today, and then obviously very important, particularly in terms of scaling, is really advancing global learning and partnerships. And it was great for Barbara to mention that we really have a whole group of people from different perspectives in our panel today. Next slide, please. And so Barbara already touched on what are the different benefits. She mentioned the increase in revenues, the reduction in energy costs, and also improvement of services, the reliability of services, and also particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was a cost reduction way. It's a way to reduce cost. And so I won't go over the slide much more. Next slide, please. And so those were the multifaceted benefits. So what exactly did we do? You will hear more about this from Alyssa when she explains what we did very shortly, but I did just want to provide a little bit of information in terms of the support we gave as USAID. So it was essentially a combination of technical assistance and grant support to utilities in Zambia and also in Kenya. And we worked with them. So this was again during the pandemic, and it was so it's Lusaka in eastern in Zambia and Isiolo and Malindi in Kenya to improve their operations through the installation of grid-connected hybrid solar systems that prioritize the use of solar when available, but still relying on the grid for backup. And the capex was around 600,000 for a total of 13 borehole sites, with a generation capacity of 358 kilowatts, serving over 60,000 people roughly. So those were the interventions that we made. We really worked very closely with the water service providers, and this was very important for us. I guess for lack of a better term, we used a very participatory approach, really working with the technical teams in each of those providers in every step of the process. And we made sure that there was great interaction among the solar providers team and the water service providers, the utilities, so that we could build their capacity to be able to scale this. So we were already thinking of scale as we started this pilot a couple years ago. So Alyssa will tell us a bit more about the performance and plans for further monitoring and analysis, and what are the opportunities to replicate and scale. And so over to you, Alyssa. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ella. I think we might go straight to a poll though first. Barbara, are we going to the poll, or do you want me to go into the presentation? Okay, well, I can go straight into my part of the presentation, and then we can do the poll after that as well. Okay, so I'll provide a bit more context on our interventions, and then from there I'll have Barbara and the panel really get into their direct experience with promoting solarization within their asset portfolios. So next slide, please. So under USAID's WashFin 2 program, we were seeking ways to scale up the experience that we built under the first WashFin, and we're trying to find the ways to best do that in each country where we work, to again ensure that these efforts are sustainable as possible, and that they don't always need donor support to continue. So one thing that we tried towards the end of WashFin was to host what we called a solar symposium. And so this was a large workshop where we brought together many more WSPs, water service providers, than those 4 that we worked with. So we brought together, I think, over 100 service providers, local banks, academics, service providers from multiple different countries to learn from the experience of our pilot investments and to build these other service providers' capacity to identify opportunities to introduce solarization within their systems, and while at the same time building relationships with the solar providers and the banks that could help them do so down the road. And so in all, we had about 200 participants at this 2-day event. Please. And so, as Ella explained in her presentation, our team worked in direct partnership with the selected water service providers to determine where their systems could benefit from solarization and to execute the entire process of designing, procuring, and developing these systems. So at our solar symposium, we provided a bit of a crash course on this process, which I'll outline in a bit more detail here. So the process started with asset verification. The water service providers submitted borehole data to our team in order of priority of the boreholes that they would hope to solarize. Our team did a number of data quality checks on that. We then moved to site prioritization and selection. We looked at the grid reliability in each of the potential sites, the availability of space for panels, of course, the size of the boreholes, and we had to ensure that we were able to meet USAID's water quality assurance standards in each case. From there, we went into initial design and packaging. So we worked with a solar expert to prepare technical specifications that we then packaged into procurement packages based on our budget availability. In the procurement phase, we worked under a pre-qualified bidding process. We were procuring design build contracts, so where the solar provider would do the design of the system and then build it directly. And that was about a 3-month procurement duration. Then once we selected the preferred bidders, we moved into implementation. The supervision was done jointly by WashFin and the water service providers. The contract management was done directly by the WashFin team. We did on-site training of operators within the water service providers and the handover of spare systems and, spare parts and systems. Next slide, please. So after the systems were completed and commissioned, we have been working in partnership with these water service providers to monitor the performance of the systems, gathering as much data as possible on their performance to enable comparison with conditions prior to the solar installations. So some of the most fundamental data points that that we're looking at are, of course, the water production of the boreholes and their grid electricity consumption, or even their diesel fuel consumption, as some of these sites also relied on diesel generators for backup power. So we looked at those data points plus many others before and after the solar installation. And so, of course, we're still collecting this data. We want a full data, a full year's worth of data at least to really have a good sense of the impact of these systems. But I'll share some initial analysis in the following slide. So this slide shows the example of our work in Isiolo, Kenya, where we solarized 6 boreholes. And so with this intervention, we've seen so far an overall increase of 162% in water production. And so that's the red bar to the far right of the graph. A 26% increase in revenue, a 62% decrease in electricity costs, and a 75% decrease again in customer complaints. Next slide, please. So these are pretty strong results, but what we want to highlight today is that the results will vary case by case. And so while the solar electricity production results may not vary as much, as long as the solar resource is strong, the system is designed well and the panels are kept clean, What you see more variation on is the commercial viability of in various cases, depending again on the market conditions in each country. So here we compare market conditions in Kenya and in Zambia, and then the resulting implications for commercial viability of these solar systems in each country. So in Kenya, you have a highly competitive solar market, high grid electricity tariffs, or a high blended cost of electricity, again, where people, where water service providers may also be using diesel generators for backups. In Kenya, you also have favorable financing conditions. And so all of these combine to create the opportunity for these investments to become commercially viable and therefore financeable by local banks or via other instruments, such as vendor financing, for example. However, so in Zambia, by comparison, the solar market itself is just less developed. The grid electricity tariff is much lower, and the financing costs are much higher. Again, which combine to make these investments not quite commercially viable at this time, or at least in the cases that we saw. Next slide, please. So in addition to the viability of the investments themselves, we are also considering the readiness of our potential partner water service providers under WashFin 2 to pursue such investments on their own. So depending on the WSP's experience with these types of investments, our team will seek to adjust the amount of support that we provide. Next slide. And so to conclude, we've seen clear climate resilience and commercial benefits from the solar investments that our team has supported. But again, finding the right way to scale these benefits will depend on the conditions in each country where we will work under WashFin 2. And so even within a country, we may apply different approaches to support water service providers so for example, while solar looks quite commercially viable in Kenya, only creditworthy WSPs can access commercial finance. And so, yeah, we may be seeking other options to support, WSPs that are not quite creditworthy yet. As another example, our team has just begun working in Ghana, where we see high electricity tariffs, but quite unaffordable financing costs at the time, currently. So this leads us to think that we will likely need to provide more grant support in Ghana or work with others who will provide concessional finance there. So that's all I have. Thank you, and I'm going to pass it back to Barbara to take us to poll and panel. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Alisa and Ella. Sorry about that. I had a small technical glitch, but everything's all sorted now. So we've heard from Ella. I think she laid a strong foundation around the work that USAID is really trying to push around scaling up solar. And we've heard from Alisa some of the processes, both on the technical side, but also issues around the financing that you need to consider if you're going to be doing these solar installations. So having heard all of that, I would like to bring you in, and there's a live poll. Kirsten, are we ready for the live poll? There are 2 questions we would like to hear from you, so please do participate. I understand this works exactly like the Mentimeter for those of us that are used to the Mentimeter. So please, Kirsten, can we have the live polling?
You'll see in your right-hand menu a red bubble pop up where you can answer the poll questions. We are going to be doing one poll at a time, but this first question has been launched, Barbara.
Thank you. So let's see some answers there. The question is, what do you think the main benefit of solar electricity generation is for water service providers? And you have some options. I'm seeing some answers coming in. Let's keep them going for another 1 minute. Let's see your answers. We have a good group on this webinar this afternoon, so let's get a few more answers in. Okay. Another 30 seconds, then we will close this poll. All right, yeah, so it's interesting. Kirsten, confirm for me that everybody is able to see the results.
Yes, everyone should be able to see them.
All right, yeah. So you can see there, it's quite interesting that majority of us have picked cost reduction as a main benefit. And I guess, yeah, looking at the fact that for most water utilities, energy seems to be one of the largest cost elements on their operations. So it's not surprising. But I'm also quite happy to see that we are looking at sustainability and resilience as other benefits. It's quite interesting that increased revenue doesn't feature at all in here, but yeah, interesting. Kirsten, let's go to the second question.
Okay, that's
so the second question, what do you think are the primary drivers of commercial viability of solar electricity installations? Again, you have some options there. Let's get those answers coming in. Are people voting? I'm not seeing any movement.
Yes, they're voting. We won't be able to see the results until after we close the poll.
All right. Okay, we can close now. Thank you so much. So what do you think are the primary drivers of commercial viability of solar installations, and again, the cost of other electricity? And I think the case of Zambia, as Alisa pointed out there, if it is cheaper to do hydro, why go for solar? So that will be a big consideration. Financing costs come up as second. So again, given our utilities are normally struggling to pay for many things, so it's interesting that financing costs has come up, and then the others are spread almost equally between the price of the solar panels themselves, the scale of the system, and installation costs. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. We'll move on and now bring in our panelists, and I'm going to just try and introduce them and ask each one, as I introduce you, please turn on your camera so our audience can see you. Engineer Isaac Chibule. Engineer Chibule is the technical manager for Malindi Water and Sewerage Company in Kenya. He holds a BSc in water engineering from Kenyatta University and a master's in project planning and management from University of Nairobi. And we've been working with him around installation of solar systems in Malindi. Engineer, you are very welcome. And then I have Dr. Irene Ngujiri. Irene is the lead at the Strathmore University Water Governance and Innovation Hub. She holds a PhD in Regional and Urban Governance from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, a Master of Business Administration and a first-class honors degree in Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Nairobi. We also worked very closely with her around the Solar Symposium last year. Dr. Irene, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. And then next I have Engineer Aaron Mulinda, who is currently the Managing Director of Eastern Water and Sanitation Company Limited, an institution he has steered from being ranked as the 4th best water utility to the best water utility in Zambia. Well done, Engineer. And he holds a degree in chemical engineering from Copperbelt University and a master's degree in business administration. Engineer, we also worked with him around solarization of boreholes in Zambia, in the eastern province of Zambia. Engineer, you are very welcome.
Thank you. Good to be part of this.
Our next panelist is Nicholas Odera. Nicholas currently serves as the humanitarian project manager at Davis and Shatcliffe in Kenya. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, and again, he supervised installation of solar borehole pumping systems in Isiolo with us in Kenya. Nicholas, can we see you, please?
Barbara, for some reason, I've turned on the camera.
Okay, we'll get to you when we ask you to speak. I'm not sure whether Dennis Ndonga is connected. Dennis, are you connected? Dennis? We can't hear you, but I will introduce you. No, there's a problem with your line. Maybe try and connect again. Okay, but I'll introduce you in the meanwhile. Dennis Ndonga is the relationship manager for water, sanitation, and hygiene at the National Bank of Kenya, and he is responsible for the National Bank's wash financing program. Dennis holds a BS from Kenyatta University, and he has served in a similar role with Family Bank before joining National Bank in 2022. And National Bank is one of the banks that we are working with in Kenya around financing WASH. So Dennis, welcome. I hope we can sort out your technical glitch. Please, Kirsten and Brett, let's see if we can help him to resolve his technical glitch there. So thank you all very much. I'm going to start with Isaac. Isaac, electricity cost is one of the critical drivers of financial performance for Malindi Water and Sewerage Company, as it is solely dependent on groundwater sources. So could you give us a sense of what percentage of your overall utility O&M expenses is made up of energy expenditures, and how that affects your creditworthiness as a water company?
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity in this. Just like rightfully said, Malindi Water is one of the service providers in the coast region. And being at the coast region, we are heavily relying on groundwater. Both sources across the schemes. We have the bigger Baricho, we have the smaller schemes of Bungale, which we had this small project of solarization. And the energy cost actually is very high in our operations because we have to do two-stage pumping. One is the abstraction, two is the high lift to the distribution lines. Then now we change the system to gravity. So from the expenditure part of view, in terms of the O&M costs, in a month, roughly we spend about 40 to 45 million Kenya shillings. And out of that, one of the contributor is the energy cost. We spend around 12.5 to 13 million in a month for all those schemes. That is the Bungale Baricho, and the Bungale and the Baricho water scheme, which translates to around 27% of our O&M cost basically is derived from the energy cost. That is the grid power. So in terms of performance, we see it as heavily affecting our performance because we spend so much in the energy. And if we are to recover this cost, then it means that we have to pump it back to or submit it to consumers. Again, in Kenya, there's a regulator whose main focus is consumer protection. So the tariffs are also regulated that you don't really, you can't really overcharge to basically to protect the consumer. Then we have the rampant and the continuous increase in tariff, changes in tariff of the power. So today, I'm talking about 27%. Recently, there is a power rise in terms of the tariff. So this one is going to also grow. So overall, it affects our performance in terms of even the meeting our O&M coverage cost. Because from the sector benchmark, the guideline is that we need to be at around 100 and above. But if you look at our performance right now in terms of coverage of O&M cost, we are below 80%. So if you present this one to an investor, then it is a bit discouraging, investor, because he's looking at the ability of you being able to meet your costs and also being able to be sustainable in terms of the service provision. So true, it is affecting our creditworthiness because This is an uncontrolled cost, and it is very necessary for the operations to be able to serve.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Isaac, for that. I'll ask you a follow-on question. So you worked with USAID's WashFin last year in solarization of 2 bores, and they were quite big. The Bungale one was quite significant. What do you see as the emerging impacts and lessons from that particular intervention from the time that the system became operational, and especially given what you've outlined around the fluctuation of power tariffs from the main utility, Kenya Power?
Thank you once again. For this scheme that we had this investment, thanks to you, WashFin, through the USAID. The scheme used to have a high cost of power in terms of those 2 stages which I've just explained, that is abstraction and also pumping to certain elevations before we gravitate. So initially, the cost of power, because of these, the size of the scheme, was coming to around 260,000 Kenya shillings per month. But after commissioning, we've realized a drop of the cost of energy in these areas, because we are operating on the hybrid system where we have supplementary power. Basically, the main focus being the solar, and where we have some cloud cover where the solar is not enough to generate enough energy to run the pumps, then we supplement with the grid. So we have realized around 42% drop in terms of the energy costs. So from around 260 to around 170,000 Kenya shillings, that is the cost that we have. However, the monster still remains, because this is a hybrid system. Solar is not that much stable because of the other climatic conditions. So recently we had an increase in the power bill, that is the tariff, from 12 to 20, that is from the grid. So this one also has also affected us a bit, because it has raised the average cost now from the 162 to around 178 thereabout. But again, it is advantageous because we have the solar, because I'm trying to imagine a situation where we did not have the system. The initial cost could have gone higher. Yep. So we find some impact in terms of the cost of energy.
Yeah.
Positive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Isaac, for that. And I'd like to encourage people, please keep the questions going in the chat. Alisa and the team are looking at those, and we will come back and answer your questions in the chat. So let me move on. Engineer Aaron Mlinda, similar to Malindi, USAID's WashFin supported Eastern Water with installation of 3 hybrid solar pumping systems in Nyimba district. And these have been functional from November 2022. So what can you say has been the impact of these systems on operations and financial performance of Eastern Water?
Thank you so much for that question. I must state that indeed this was a timely intervention because the project area had the serious power challenges in terms of outages and voltage fluctuations. But I think with the intervention, we have seen a number of positive impacts in the project area. So the first one is to do with we've seen a reduction in the energy costs that is averaging around 32, at most 35%. And further to this, because of the outages that I initially talked about, you realize that we have also seen stability in terms of hours of supply. So we've seen the hours of supply improve by 3 hours because the frequent outages that we used to have are no longer there. And also the frequent outages I used to have are no longer there. And currently we are stable. So in the same vein, We've also seen that there's been a lot of customer satisfaction because the customers are now happier. They have got additional hours of supply. So those, in a nutshell, have been the major improvements. Not to also forget we've seen a slight increase in revenue in the project area that has come as a result of stable supply. Nyimba project area is normally a very hot area, and the sun is normally good. So when we have continuous sun, it normally gives us optimal results in a particular month. So I thought I should highlight those respective positive impacts that we have seen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's interesting, I think, to Alisa's point earlier about different conditions in the countries, I think to add the issue of climate variability as well seems to be an important element in considering these solar installations. If you allow me, I'm going to move and bring in Dr. Irene. Dr. Irene, from what both Isaac and Aaron have shared, it is clear that the water energy nexus, is critical, and it is particularly critical for economic growth. Now, the scarcity of one exerts pressure on the other. Yeah, the water footprint and the energy footprint they overlap, but synergies are overlooked. So how can the two sectors better build linkages for improved service provision for both electricity and water supply?
Thank you very much, Barbara. I think first is the understanding of what the water energy nexus is. It's actually just the interaction and the linkage between water and energy, and also looking at the synergies and the trade-offs, as you've said, and many times we overlook these synergies. So the reason why we like to focus on the nexus is to see how, because if one falls short, then the other also suffers. And many times when talking about the nexus, we look at water for energy and also energy for water. So water for fuel production, extraction and refining, hydropower, and also cooling of thermal generation. Then when we think about the reverse, which is energy for water, we are thinking about energy, and in this case, the focus here in this discussion is solar, is pumping and distribution, desalination, treatment, and processing energy here that is used for wastewater treatment. So just when we think about the examples we have, is that when you have drought, then power production suffers. When you have blackouts, water treatment and distribution suffers. So it's important to have an integrated approach in managing both these resources, water and energy, so as to solve the challenges that are being faced. And it's also important to understand these linkages between the two resources. Now, with regards to how to build the linkages, what can we do? I have 2 points, but there could be more. And the first thing is technology. So looking at technology as an enabler, digital as an enabler. And thankfully, there are many technologies that support water efficient energy systems and also energy efficient water systems. And so what is important is to see how to explore these technologies, as well as thinking about productive use of non-traditional waters. So when thinking about technology, think about innovations around process modeling and visualization. So how can we have integrated analysis and modeling of the water energy nexus? This generally requires simulation of many human and natural systems, and that also introduces some complexities. So innovations around that. The other thing that is also important when thinking about technology, now that we have Chat GPT, is to think about machine learning, and how this can also be applied to capture the quality of water and the quality of energy with higher accuracy. So to see how to combine both structured and unstructured data to enhance the understanding.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Irene. Just in the interest of time, I want to move on. So you've raised a number of issues to me there, which seem to be speaking to an issue about partnerships between the sector and the academia. How can we build those relationships? Why is it important for the sector and the academia to work together around this particular subject in 2 minutes?
Okay, universities are important because universities can set the stage for creating the readiness for transition to solar power. So in that sense, universities will help the different stakeholders to move up this evolution ladder. And when thinking about water and energy, these are special. They are special because they are systems of systems. They have knock-on effects on other systems. So water has a knock-on effect on energy. Energy has a knock-on effect on water, on health, on gender, etc. And so it's important to see the preparedness for the transition. And so this is where universities will come in to help people move to the next level, to be prepared for the uptake of solar energy. And this preparedness could be on 3 perspectives. So one is societal. So are people willing and ready to adopt these systems? And most importantly, are they willing to pay for them? So for example, if we think that we would use wastewater as a way of generating power, then are people ready to have that shift? Organizational readiness, building capacity of organizations and their skills, and looking at the infrastructure to see, do they have what is required to integrate this particular system? And finally, the third perspective is the regulatory readiness, because we know that regulation is an enabler and a catalyst for uptake of these systems. So universities then come in from the capacity building and research, so that people can actually be able to take up and be ready for this transition that we so much are advocating for at this particular point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irene. Fascinating stuff there. And I'm going to bring in Nicholas because you touched on a point there. Nicholas, we worked with you around sanitation, solarizing systems. You've been doing this in Kenya for quite a while. And Dr. Irene talks about capacity there. So could you just share with us honestly, you are protected, by the way, so be honest in your answer to us. What was your experience building the capacity of water service providers to install, operate, and maintain the facilities? And what role do you see companies like yours, Davis and Shutleaf, playing in that specific area?
All right, thank you, Barbara. I hope I'm visible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. So I'll start by maybe talking about our role of service providers in this space. I think first of all is to provide technical expertise and system designs, because solar providers have specialized knowledge and expertise. They can offer their technical know-how to water service providers in assisting, maybe in assessing the energy requirements, conducting site evaluations, and finally proposing, the best suitable solar solutions for the systems. Second of all, and I think this is a very big challenge to the water service providers, is financing option. This is one significant barrier, to adopting the energy. And I think where we can come in is just to help overcome this barrier by offering financial support by maybe entering into power purchase agreements, etc. Probably the other one is where we can come in is by assisting in the maintenance and monitoring of these systems. After we've put up these systems, these systems need to last for a long time. So we need to just come in, offer maintenance and monitoring services to ensure the optimal performance of these solar systems. And these, I think, in monitoring, there are some various technologies where you can remotely monitor these systems, and you can actually even troubleshoot these systems. So I think that's a very key aspect in the maintenance bit. I think, another one is on trainings. After we install these systems, we need to train these operators on how to operate these systems and basic maintenance of these. This will ensure longevity of these systems, and this can be done through various platforms like the one we're doing, the webinars, on-site trainings, and I think these will go a long way. Finally, I can say is on policy support. We can engage in advocacy and provide support for favorable policies, putting in place favorable policies that will enable water service providers to uptake these technologies. I think, and the second one, just the experience in capacity building. I think the experience was quite smooth, I must say. It was easy because we were dealing with the technical people who understood, have some technical background. They understood the systems. So I must say, just working with water service providers has been smooth. I can just say, in terms of sustainability, I think it's still an issue. After we leave the site, we hand over the sites. I think there's some issues that can be worked on in terms of sustainability. But just to offer solution, train, capacity build, I think it has been a smooth journey for us.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. And I'll move to the next part, which you mentioned there a little bit. Dennis, can you please confirm that you are able to speak? Dennis?
I'm being...
Go on, Dennis. I could hear you.
I'm saying I'm being muted by the chat. So good evening, good morning. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Yes,
and I'll ask you just one question, yeah, because you're struggling with your connectivity there. So you are one of the banks that have been working in the water sector for a while now, and we know you have a keen interest, in furthering your engagement on providing financing to the sector. So could you just tell us a little bit your current level of engagement with water utilities, and if you see any role or the possibility for providing specific products around solar installations in the water sector?
Thank you, Barbara, and everyone else. My name is Dennis Donga from National Bank. Yes, National Bank has been in the wash business since the year 2021. We are a subsidiary of the KCB Group PLC, and what we do with our flagship product called Magic Connect, we offer solutions around financing, targeting both utilities, MSMEs, and individuals. And solarization is one of our offerings, and we believe there is opportunities in doing solarization. And how we do it is that we do it across all our branches. We have a bank-wide branch of 83 branches across. So we target both the peri-urban, the urban, and the rural utilities. And what we do as a bank for this technical request, we have a partner, Aqua for All, who has given us funds to do feasibility studies for this WSPs who seek funding from us. But again, once the feasibility study is out and we give our recommendations through our technical partners, discussions around availing financing is there we get stuck. Yeah. But as a bank, we are willing, committed, and we have like a tune of 5 billion committed to just advance to the WSPs. And we have in mind, we believe solarization will come in handy first to reduce the cost of operation, and also accelerate or improve the hours of supply. Also, we believe as a bank, we have signed up to the UN Global Compact, where we have adopted some SDGs, and we believe carbon emission is one of our footprint. We have initiatives internally to support both the public, private WSPs, and I can mention the few that we have worked with. We have worked with Kitui to solarize their boreholes. We are having discussions with Garissa Water also to see how we can solarize their pumping, and also Taita Taveta. These are some of the WSPs where you find they're in the hot or arid areas of Kenya. So as NBK, we are doing it. Actually, as I'm speaking to you, I'm attending a forum for water and sanitation, where we're just trying to showcase how we support both the utility space and also the private space. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very encouraged to hear that, and I'm sure many people on this call, especially the ones working in Kenya, are encouraged to hear that. So I'm just going to kind of give a wrap up of a few things I have heard and then open up to answer some of your questions there. I hope that Alisa and Tim are ready to pass on those questions. So a few things I hear is that solar power for water is viable, but of course you've got to look at the conditions where you are, technical, finance, and otherwise. It has many benefits, and I think those have been articulated quite well here around reduction of costs and increasing the service that's available. But we also hear that it does require some mindset shift, both at the societal level, but also at an organizational and policy level. We require capacity building, on how to sustain these systems once they have been installed. It requires innovation around financing, but also that the financing sector is looking at it as a possible market. So we're really in a good place, I think, when we talk about solar installations here. So let's hear now from you. And Alisa, I'm ready to start answering some of those questions. Keep the questions coming on the chat. If we don't answer them today, we'll still find a way to try and answer some of those. Alisa.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, it's been super active in the Q&A. So I tried to pull some, particularly those that are kind of being asked in different ways, but hitting at the same topics. So maybe we can start with one of those top ones, which is getting at the issue of the sustainability of groundwater pumping. So a number of participants asked about what are we doing to monitor the kind of the sustainability of that groundwater source and to prevent over pumping. And so, yeah, I thought maybe we could ask that one of Isaac or Aaron.
Yep. Isaac, are you still with us? I think he had to run. Isaac, confirm if you are still with us. I think not. Aaron, do you want to take that question on? Are we overutilizing the groundwater resource?
I missed probably the first part of the question. Yeah, so probably
I can summarize them again. There have been several questions about the sustainability of the groundwater resource that these solar systems are now enabling greater use of. So so some people asked, were hydrogeological constraints considered as part of site selection? I mean, I guess maybe just to clarify, these are existing groundwater, existing borehole sites. So I just want to make sure that the audience knows that. But so the audience is asking, are there impacts on the groundwater levels that are being considered as part of our ongoing monitoring, and what has been our approach to managing any negative externalities resulting from increased or potentially even excessive groundwater pumping. Has this been a concern in your experience so far?
Yeah, thank you so much. Of course, that's a very important perspective that come out, and it's something that must be looked at critically, especially at the design stage, so that the impact and the consequences of these interventions is quite clear in relation to groundwater. But in the case of Eastern Province, and particularly Nyimba, where we had the project, the intervention actually was squarely fitting into the adequate existing water reserves that were there, because at design it was actually designed in such a way that the water resources that were there could sustain a continuous pumping, even before the solar interventions came through. So when the power fluctuations, the power outages actually pushed us into an underutilization mode in our case. So really, coming up with the solar still kept us in check with the underground water resources. But just to speak to the next component, the other component of how do we ensure that we sustainably manage the underground water resources in this case. My view would be to ensure that at design stage, we factor in all those aspects that will ensure that we have a sustainable approach processes, in as much as we are going to have stable and uptime equipment availability. So that will be my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Alisa, do you have a second question, or can I pick up one?
I do have quite a few in queue. I wanted to maybe answer one ourselves, Barbara. So there have been a couple questions also about what is the optimal source of either funding or financing these types of investments. And so in particular, I think one audience member reacted to my comment in saying that we might likely use grant support in Ghana. And so maybe I want to clarify that we're always searching for the optimal source of financing. And wherever possible, we are trying to take a more strategic approach to see where we have the ability to impact the cost of local financing within a country, and certainly also pulling on the influence of USAID, our funder, to work with governments to try to stimulate more attractive lending rates. But that being said, there's only so much we can do to work against macroeconomic conditions that make financing unaffordable. But again, there are certainly opportunities for us to partner with other large initiatives that are helping to address this. And so, for example, in Ghana, we are looking at partnering with an African Development Bank funded program that is seeking to make financing more affordable for these types of investments. So yeah, and then I think another question asked, why would we look at commercial finance versus, perhaps like the Green Climate Fund? And so again, the scale of these investments are very small, and so they're particularly attractive for commercial financing, where that's viable. And commercial financing is also particularly attractive because it's in local currency, which makes it easiest for these service providers to pay back. And so again, we don't want to be using grant financing where it's possible to use commercial financing, because we don't want to crowd out, that financing within the market. But there are times where we do still believe that it's necessary to be used, but again, just within the right scale. Okay, so I'll move on to one maybe. I think there's a couple questions probably for Nicholas about the nature of the solar market in Kenya. And so I think some audience members asked about what are the major barriers to scale for businesses that sell solar pumping technologies. And another audience member asked if we could further elaborate on, what do we mean by underdeveloped solar markets in Zambia in particular. And then another asked about, how do we ensure the quality of solar solutions providers within countries, and kind of what is there a role for government in licensing and looking at the quality of these services. So I hope Nicholas was listening and could pick up on some of those.
Nicholas, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
About on the last part about policy issues, because we did address some of those in the solar symposium that we had in Kenya. Nicholas.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So I think I'll speak about quality in terms of how the government is ensuring that all these systems are of quality, especially on the equipment. I think there are several policies ensuring that people who the service providers are bringing in quality equipment. For example, solar panels, solar modules, pumps, cables. So there are policies in place, and these are all vetted. So that is one way of ensuring that what we are bringing in and what we are installing for these systems are of good quality, and that these will definitely ensure sustainability of these systems. I think the second one, I think I'll touch on the scalability of business. Alisa, you said you asked. So the scalability of business, I didn't really quite get that question, but what I can say, what I understood is that if a service provider wants to enter into this market of solarizing these equipments, definitely there are several licenses that are needed, requirements by the government. You need to have licenses to import the solar modules. You need to have licenses. The engineers working on the systems have to be licensed by the regulatory bodies in Kenya. So those, if one can definitely get such requirements, and yes, definitely they can enter into this business of solarizing these boreholes. Yeah.
Can I come in here, Lisa and Nicholas, and maybe I wanted to bring in Aaron again, because I think part of the question that was asked was really around why is it so difficult? Maybe why are we not seeing more of this? And I think that's kind of where we started. And so maybe the right person to ask is Aaron, who is working with the water utility. Aaron, what are the barriers? Why haven't you done more of this? Maybe even after WashFin finished. What is the challenge from a utilities perspective? Aaron.
Thank you so much. From the utilities perspective, really, I must start by saying that in the case of Eastern Water, you can see that we have a huge opportunity to be able to upscale with these solar installations, because most of the climatic conditions are favorable. But what is the major issue in our case? I think it has been the financing aspect, which has been so outstanding. So we are actually looking forward to upscale the partnerships even the partnership that we're currently enjoying with USAID WASHFIN, if it can be upscaled so that we can be able to get into this at a larger scale. We've also seen the interest from the private sector in terms of trying to entice us to get this on a commercial basis. And we are currently working out the numbers, but you realize that in some cases the payback period is a little bit longer. That has not interested some of them, but discussions continue in that particular aspect. So the legal framework around solarization is okay. The climatic conditions, good. Of course, we are looking at the savings that we are talking about now. I think they look encouraging, among other benefits that come with this. But financing has really stood in the way of us expanding at the rate that we would want to expand. I submit.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aaron. And I was going maybe to pick up that and go back to Alisa on a question which was included within the ones you had, and that was really around the markets. You know, like why did we feel the Zambian market was not as ready as the Kenyan market, for instance? And to start off, part of the experience we had with Zambia is you have very little demand. Maybe little is wrong, but the demand for these services is not actually there. So at that basic idea of the market, you have a product which is available, but you have very few people that are demanding it, and so therefore the market price, you know, is a little bit higher because if you don't have as many people demanding that product. Whereas if you look in Kenya, you have a much larger market for solar installations, and so therefore the price becomes a little bit, let's say, cheaper compared to Zambia. Not that it is cheap in Kenya, but it is cheaper compared to the Zambian market simply because the demand is a little bit at a higher level. But also the people who are providing, the companies that are providing the services are more in a context like Kenya compared to Zambia. So again, the market there plays a big role in determining what the price of this would be. But Alisa, anything else you want to add on the question about the markets and why they are different from one place to another?
No, I think that covers it really well, Barbara. Maybe if we go to a frequent technical question that's coming up in the Q&A. So there's been a number of questions related to whether we've incorporated any type of storage within the systems that we financed. So any type of battery storage or any type of grid interconnection where these water service providers could be able to sell back to the grid any type of excess production. So I thought maybe again Isaac or Aaron could answer those.
Mm-hmm. And Nicholas actually can also comment on the ones that we installed in Isiolo. But Aaron, do you want to go first?
There was
Aaron, are you there?
I'm here. There was some bit of network failure, so I must have missed that. So probably I can pick up the gist as discussions proceed, or maybe could easily recite that.
Alisa, do you want to repeat the question for Aaron?
Sure. The question was, did the systems that we developed, did they include battery storage, and like, why not? Or did they include a mechanism where we could sell excess electricity production back to the grid?
Aaron?
Okay. As I was following, I think the network again misbehaved, but I want to confirm that probably you're talking about the storage component of energy.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think in the line discussions, what was what was the limiting factor at that time was mainly due to the appropriate storage modality that we could work with, so that we could be able to store some energy and use it at the later stage. So that coupled with the aspect of budget, I think that was outside the component of this particular phase. So we could not proceed, but we want to explore that, because the advantage is that we are currently just using this during the day. So if we can escalate and store some energy, you realize that the benefits will actually be more, because we'll be more on solar other than on the grid.
Thank you. There was the other part to this question, maybe Nicholas can speak to this, was around selling back power to Kenya Power. Was this considered in the case of the systems in Kenya? And if not, why not?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talks about selling back to the grid in Kenya, because we have many solar pumping systems. But unfortunately, in Kenya, we still don't have a policy in place that allows us to sell back to the grid. Even the buildings that have the grid tie systems, we still cannot sell back to the grid. So that is where we have a challenge. I'll also speak about storage. In our systems, we've not done storage, and we normally discourage doing storage in these systems, because we will require a very large battery bank to store power in order to pump at night, and this is very expensive. We have lead acid batteries that are at least cheaper, but right now we have the new technologies with lithium ion, which is more expensive, and these, if we incorporate storage, these systems will be very expensive, and I think everyone will run away from. So we normally encourage just pump during our sunshine hours. We size the system correct so that you maximize the sunshine hours during the day.
Thank you, Nicholas. Alisa, another question for us to pick up? We have a few more minutes.
Sure. I think what one member of the audience asked us, have we tried to calculate the potential for greenhouse gas reductions compared to the base case before these systems were installed? I suppose I could answer that in saying, this is all data that I think basically we're collecting the data required that would enable that type of analysis. And yeah, I think we would really like to look into that to see, because we do believe that there are both, climate mitigation and adaptation benefits, enabled by investment in these systems, and we want to be able to produce the analysis required to demonstrate both sides of those benefits. So I suppose please stay tuned as we continue to collect data from these systems and continue to make best use of it. Maybe for
and I think, before we go to the next one, I think that also answers the question from Beris Gwine, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, which was asking whether there's a strong tendency to focus on the technology, and then we limit the scope which delivers, then we have skewed data on solar and water. And I think that part of what the WashFin activity is trying to do, which we've been following up from the installation, is really try and understand what are those linkages, what are these numbers actually real numbers? Are they making sense? Is there something else that needs to change? So that if we are going to say, look, we need to scale up, it is on the basis of some facts, and not necessarily the idea that there's a technology. We know the technology works, but it's got to work correctly, in terms of all the other elements that a water utility must consider. So thank you very much, Beris, for that question. Alisa, I think we can take one last question.
Okay. Maybe just to ask about thoughts from the panelists on what role government should play in further incentivizing the ability for water service providers to adopt increased investment in solarization.
And we'll start with Irene. She's been very quiet. Irene, what role for government?
Thank you very much, Barbara. I think what comes to my mind is in the area of regulation, to create an enabling environment where companies, water service providers, and also private investors who want to get into the area of solar can thrive and create a win-win situation for both parties. I'm also thinking in regulation, I was thinking about taxation and other tariffs that could also affect the uptake of the technologies. From a university perspective, I think the government could also invest money in research, see how to enhance the technologies in specific contexts. So thinking about how can we support research and innovation with regards to solar, but that is where then the universities come in a big way. And I always like to think that the triple helix model will work very well, where you have private, public, and also academia working together so as to enhance whatever issue it is, even in the area of solar technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And for those that are not aware, Irene is being very modest here. Strathmore University is powered almost 100%, their campus, almost 100% on solar. And that's part of the reason that a partnership with them makes a lot of sense, because they are talking about something they are living. They are living the talk, Ella, please prepare yourself to give some closing remarks in a minute or so. But for now, I'm going to turn to Dennis. Dennis, I hope you're still there. How can government help to push some of this financing, which you say is available at the banks, but you are struggling to get it out of the door to go where it is needed, including in solar, which we are agreeing is a good opportunity?
Thank you, Barbara. So for me, I believe one, government to create an enabling environment, both to allow more and more people to bring these panels, and also ensuring that we have the right quality or standards of panels in the country. The other thing, when it comes to financing, WSPs are still owned by they are owned by our county governments. So both the national and the county governments really needs to accelerate advocacy within that space, and also help in transfer of assets, because remember, one of the biggest challenges that we're having in advancing credit to these utilities is availability of collateral. Yeah. So if government can really fasten that process of transfer of properties to these utilities, strongly believe that accessing credit will be easy. The other thing is all about regulation. Right now in Kenya, we are seeing government really working on a PPP mechanism, where water provision will be more of a public-private partnership. And we believe that's where, as financiers, we can support more of the private players to ensure that the public-owned utilities are able not only just to reduce their energy costs or improve on their efficiency, but also when it comes to other areas, like connectivity to more and more households, repairing of the old infrastructure that we have in our systems. But again, to capacity build also these institutions, right from the
You've muted. Dennis, you are muted.
I'm not.
Yeah. Okay.
You can hear me now. I'm saying we need to really see that government plays a critical role in capacity building the governors in our counties, because we are seeing a lot of interferences with leadership at the county level, and this really affects the governance and credibility structure when it comes to banking standards of these water companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm not going to try and sum up the discussion, which has been absolutely lively and very educative. But I do want to say we have seen on the questions, people asking whether the recording will be shared, the presentations. Yes, the webinar has been recorded. We have the presentations and they will be shared with everybody who is registered on this platform with us today. And if I had any words to say to you is we as a team from both the USAID side and the WashFin program, we are saying we think this is an opportunity. We do not have all the answers and we are ready to explore those partnerships which came up quite a few times in the conversations. Can we work together to try and push this agenda to the extent that it does contribute to us delivering clean water for our populations in the continent, in Africa, and elsewhere, where we are still struggling with this issue. So I'd like to just thank you on behalf of Alisa, our Chief of Party, and the team that has been working with us to get the webinar together, for joining us, for your contributions and your views. Please do stay in touch. And I'll hand over to Ella to give her closing remarks and close the webinar. Ella, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Barbara. I know it's only a minute. I really just want to thank our esteemed panel of panelists and speakers that we had today, really, and you, Barbara and Alyssa, for making this webinar a success, and also the participants. I must say that after, I don't know when we started webinars in the water sector, but over almost 20 years, but I think maybe at least in the last 10 years of a lot of webinars, this has been one of the more active Q&A, a lot of active participation that I've seen from the audience. It really shows that there's a lot of interest in the topic, and we know that we have to do something about it, and we also have to learn. We're not just saying as USAID that everything has to be scaled up. We have to analyze and monitor. So from our perspective at USAID, I really just want to commit to that we will continue learning, we will continue disseminating information and engaging with you, the audience, on this topic. There's been a lot of interest as well in rural, so I'll work with our team of advisors at USAID to make sure we also look at the rural aspects and think about perhaps a continuous webinar series, Barbara, that focusing on solar and water investments. I think that could be a subtopic that we can continue discussing with a more regular cadence instead of just once a year, once every 2 years, given the interest in the topic, and really pick up some of the questions and topics that the audience flagged for us. You really are pushing us to make this work better. So we hope to pay you back in return for all the attention and interest by really continuing to engage. Please email us if you want to email me I'll put my email here if you have any suggestions, as this is really a topic not just of interest to WashFin and USAID as a whole, but really the US government. It's part of our work in terms of our climate strategy in the US government, and we would love to engage more. And thank you for all your thoughts, and stay tuned. We'll have a blog, we'll have the materials, and promise that we will have more events, and you're not going to wait a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please feel free to leave at your own time. Asante sana, and have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.